Good evening, everybody. Welcome to this evening's ReGen Ag Chat. Tonight we're focusing on making space for nature. We've got Neil Heseltine and James Robinson joining us this evening. We'll go to them in a second for introductions. But Nick, what have you been up to in the last month?
Oh, what have I been up to? Well, the one thing I haven't been doing, Liz, is lambing sheep because we ain't got no sheep. I'm not missing it, but I am missing that sheepy smell. If I go past a field with lambs in it, I do kind of miss the smell. So what have we been doing? We've been to the seaside, but mainly we've been getting cows out, getting them on rotation, just about to start calving, and I've been working hard to get our glamping. We bought some, some people will know this, but we bought some Russian personnel carriers 2 years ago. Very bad timing since. So I'm trying to rebrand them and get them out. So we called them very Russian names. Everything was about the fact that they were Russian, got Rasputin, Rusky and Husky. So now got to think of names. So if anyone could think of any quirky names for personnel carriers that you go glamping in, let me know. We're struggling.
Can we just ignore the fact they're just Russian, or just still after names? They need a rebrand. Okay, fair enough.
Yeah, and they've got to be a bit quirky. So someone mentioned names of trees, and it's like, oh no, it's got to be a bit wilder than that. But Liz, tell us about worms. Our last speaker was Anna de la Vega, the worm.
Yep.
And you've got to come into your place.
Yes, so we've got an event. Well, I'm hosting it at mine on the 17th of May, and I'll post in a second how if people are interested. So my place is bottom end of Lincolnshire, Stamford. So yeah, she's coming for a day technical workshop, and I've set up. Well, since that call, I've reset up my food waste bins so they're a bit more proper, and I've also started a manure windrow with worms. So there'll be things to look at.
So have you bought worms?
I have.
Oh, times have changed.
Well, I've decided after I have been lambing sheep, they're a lot easier. You can just buy them on Amazon and it all goes wrong. It's solvable. So yeah, I have been.
So this will be
I don't miss the smell of sheep.
Oh, well, this will be a workshop for farmers, but also for just the general public if they want to get rid of their waste food.
So yeah, I've made contact. With some of the event is happening at the village pub, so the village pub is interested in setting one up to deal with their food waste as well. So yeah, it's a range of could be local businesses and all sorts. So yeah, anybody who's interested. But I'll put the link in the chat function. It was also on the ReGen Ag Chat reminder email that came as part of that. So if you scroll down, it's also there as well.
And in the scheme of kind of
you were on TV.
Well, that's why I'm fully branded, James. No, I've just been on telly, but on like it sounds dodgy this, but on like global telly. So hopefully no one here will have seen it. That sounds even dodgier. So there's an organization called We Don't Have Time, and it's a global kind of climate awareness organization. And they I went on one program in the autumn, and I was on a call today with people just all joining in online. I think there was 10,000, and I was on it for like 5 minutes at the very most. But it's just interesting that there was people from all around the world, and they're so excited about the possibilities of ReGen Ag in the kind of fight for a better climate. So yeah, no, it was good. It was good. I've met this really, the good thing about it, they are a bit butt clenchingly I get very nervous, but there was a few ladies on the call with me who were really good. So I'm hoping that I'm going to allure one here. So a soil lady and an agroforestry lady, but it's like you realize that it's like a global everyone's kind of thinking the same. So that's good. It's good possibilities. But as we'll talk tonight with Neil and James, there's still with farmers, we've got to take the masses with us. But tonight we've got these two gorgeous creatures. Neil from Malham Cove and James from down the road at Kendal to me. And I met these two probably through nature friendly farming, but I probably knew James before then. And they, to me, they'll get embarrassed now, but they are kind of legends in this world. And they do great stuff. So yeah, it's going to be good, Liz.
So shall we start with Neil? Are you happy to introduce him, Nick?
I am. So Neil Heseltine, who I've realised I've spelt your name wrong a lot. Neil, do you want to just introduce yourself, because you'll do a much better job than me?
Yeah, I can do. And then I'll just go into a brief introduction of where we're at on the farm, what we've done, etc. over the last few years. So thanks very much to you all for inviting me to come along today, and good evening to everybody that's watching in. As Nick says and Liz says, my name's Neil Heseltine. I live and farm in Malham, which is on the southern edge of the Yorkshire Dales National Park. Very much a family farm. My dad moved here with his parents in about 1950, but it had been in my mother's side of the family prior to that. So been in the family for a little while. I didn't come back here to start farming full time until 2001, but prior to that, I'd been educated very conventionally in agriculture. I went to Sealhain Agricultural College, and education is probably stretching it a little bit, but then through the 90s, I worked on farms round and about, and as I say, as a result of foot and mouth mainly, that was when I came back to farm full time at Malham. Just in terms of sort of farming for nature, and I won't drag this out too long, but we always talk about sort of two defining times for us. We first got involved with conservation grazing and the introduction of cattle onto the farm in 2004, and that was through a project called the Limestone Country Project, and that was when we actually look back now, we sort of see that as really being involved with that and getting cattle onto the farm and changing how we grazed the farm for nature was very much changed that whole philosophy that I'd gone through from an educational point of view and working on conventional farms through the 90s. We look back at it now and say that was a pivotal time that made the difference. We then went through the sort of 2000s, and the other sort of defining time for us was 2012. We'd had the cattle on the farm for about 8 years at that stage. We were starting to see the benefits that they were having in terms of biodiversity. We're starting to learn much more that how you grazed animals, the species with which you graze, the timings of the grazing, really, really critical actually. And then the species that you used were all really, really important to determining what nature, what biodiversity you got on the farm. And then through that same period of time, I was also trying to breed the champion mule Gimmer lamb as well, and blue-faced Leicester tups, and with very, very minimal success. A little bit of success at local shows here and there, but nothing too amazing. So we had two enterprises running sort of side by side, a very, very low input Belted Galloway cattle enterprise, and a very, very high input, high energy, took all my mental and physical energy to run the sheep enterprise. And we got to about 2012 when we sort of said, let's have a look at this a little bit more closely, and let's have a look at it both environmentally, because we were seeing the benefits of having the cattle on the farm from a nature perspective, but let's have a look at it economically, and let's just see where we're at. And we did that, and the results are sort of seared on my brain in that the income from the sheep was about £60,000, the income from the cattle was £20,000, but the profit from the cattle was 11, and at very, very best we were breaking even on the sheep. In fact, the figure was £478 from that £60,000 income. And like I say, every bit of my mental and physical energy was going into trying to breed those brilliant mule Gimmer lambs. So it was at that time that that we thought, right, we'll have a change of direction. Let's learn a few lessons from what we're doing here. The nature on the farm was becoming more and more important to us. Seeing that was fulfilling us. It was giving us a reason to be, a reason to farm, and we were just, as I say, changing our whole psyche on the farm completely. So it was learning lessons from the cattle enterprise. Let's try and farm the sheep in the same way. So it was really about reducing sheep numbers as much as we possibly could. We dropped them to about 200, and by about 2016, the cattle enterprise had developed. We were seeing more nature on the farm, and we had half as many sheep, and they were being far more profitable than the sort of 800 that we'd had previously. So that's kind of where we've gone in terms of just the farm and its business. Just to try and sum that up, really, what I would say at this stage is the main learning process that we've gone through is that the more we've put nature at the forefront of the business making decisions, the better off we've been financially. We've moved the business into a much, much better place. We're working much less on the farm. So all that energy that I was putting into the sheep enterprise is far less. So in terms of the returns on the number of hours that I put into the farm, that's been really beneficial. And that obviously allows us to have time off. That allows us to have holidays from time to time. And so to try and sum it up completely, we think we've put the farm in a better place, both financially, environmentally, and socially for ourselves as people and as a family. But that has been about putting nature at the forefront of what we do. Thanks, Nick.
Thanks, Neil. I've got one more photo there. So there you've got, can you just talk through that photo and maybe talk a little bit about how your mindset has shifted within the last few years? Because not many farmers would think, oh, I'm going to take a picture of some thistles.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that just kind of sums up where we're at now in terms of we've got thistles on the farm. That doesn't particularly bother us that much anymore. It would have done at one stage. And to see invertebrates like that, tiny flies, I couldn't even name what flies there are. There'll be people out there that know exactly what they are. But to provide that kind of habitat, and it's a habitat that not necessarily a lot of farmers would like to see on their farm, we're really pleased to start seeing that on the farm now. We're providing habitat for thistles. Everybody can do that, but then the fact that we're allowing them to flower is allowing those little bugs there, those little inverts, just to live their life as well. So you're effectively providing habitat, and that's just become a really, really important part of what we do.
And if I just go back, say that picture there with the you correct. Tell us about those flowers.
Yeah, I was extremely impressed with your flower knowledge earlier on when we were going through this, Nick. But the reason why this is so important to us, it's on a field called Great Close Mire, which was one of the fields we went into with the Limestone Country project, and the actual emblem of the Limestone Country project was a flower called the bird's eye primrose, and that's exactly what this flower is in the foreground. So the field has been really important to us because it was part of that initial Limestone Country project, but to actually see the development of the bird's eye primrose on that field as a result of how we were grazing it was one of the sort of penny drop moments as we went through the process, to sort of say you can make a difference by how you graze and how you farm your land to the benefit of nature. So it's just a really important picture for us.
These things were always there, they were just always nibbled by sheep. Is that right?
Yeah, and that's actually a really important point. That's exactly what happened on here. In normal times, there'd be sheep on here nibbling away, and the first thing they would eat would almost be those bird's eye primrose. And I think one of the biggest things we've learned is that all these flowers are usually still there in the seedbed. They just don't get the opportunity. So what we're doing is just saying we've got to give these species, the botanical species, initially the opportunity to thrive and to flower and to set seed again, and the management of the land allows that to happen.
Okay, and if I just go back, that was just a really good picture. I mean, I've seen this kind of thing with James.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
we've lost on our farm. I don't know how about you, Liz, but we haven't really got anything like this. It's all gone.
Yeah, this has been quite an important process as well. This is in one of the species-rich hay meadows, and this, when we set out on this was probably delivered through the Countryside Stewardship Scheme, to be fair, or HLS as it was at the time. And this meadow had been ploughed post-war. There was a lot of perennial ryegrass in it. It was probably species-rich back in the day. And we got involved with bringing seed in, so bringing green hay in, and literally on probably a 4 or 5 acre field. This is called Butcher Meadow, one of our sort of low upland meadows. And all we did was scarify 12 areas in this 4 to 5 acres. Imported green hay from another local farmer, brought in, and just literally spread it on those 12 little scarified areas, which are literally 2 meters by 1 meter. And just by managing it in the right way, i.e. taking the sheep out at the right time and cutting it at the right time, it allows species like this to develop. And now this kind of sort of flora and fauna covers the whole field, and it's all started off in those 12 small areas. So in the picture there, you've obviously got buttercups, the yellow stuff. The stuff in the foreground is yellow rattle, really important parasitic plant for development of species-rich meadows. Red clover, obviously, and there'll be some eyebright in there, some no doubt, and the white stuff, meadowsweet possibly. I'll be proved wrong on that, but a few dandelions as well. So, just a much broader much broader number of species than there was previously.
So when you were doing your scarifying with the green hay, did you have faith at that point?
I was entering the unknown, I guess. I was going along with people who I knew a lot more than I did, and I certainly didn't know that this is what we would end up with just from those 12 little areas. And so I was probably a little bit skeptical. No, it's pig nut, James is saying. Thanks, James. So yeah, it's fair to say that I was skeptical at the outset. But this was just the kind of transformation you see in front of you is just what can be possible and what is capable if it's just managed in the right way.
And Neil, in terms of how, well, we're impatient, but how many years did you see a difference within a year, or how quick was that change?
No, it's interesting because like with this is, I think we did this in about 2008, and probably within 5 years this was changing fairly rapidly by that stage. But interestingly, on the botanicals, you can get quite quick wins, and if you just, for example, take the grazing off in spring, even in the first year, you will see things returning there. You will see things flowering in there that I've literally never seen ever before on the farm. And just an example of that is we just did that in one field. It's been a pasture all its life. We managed it a little bit more as a meadow in more recent times, and that first year we got a ton of harebells and a ton of yarrow in that field, and so just within that sort of first season of not grazing in the way that we always had grazed, we're starting to see botanical species returning. So you can get really quick wins with some of the botanical stuff.
Thank you.
Just going through the last, I'm just thinking, is there anything on these other pictures? I can't get it to move. Oh, come on.
So, and we have got bits like that we rent in that has been long-term, low input, organically managed meadows for the last probably 15 years. We're obviously a different lower down river meadow type stuff, and we also have some limestone. We have an SSSI, like a really thin strip of some really interesting plant, but very close to two massive arable fields.
Yeah,
just a strip between the two, which can't be ploughed, and that's why it's still there.
Yeah, I mean the limestone and chalk grasslands and habitats are really important, because as you can see here, this is a lot of limestone on here, which is good for us in terms of outwintering cattle, but it's also a really unique landscape, both in how it looks, but also in the species that live amongst it. And so there's almost more of an onus on us to sort of protect, if that's the right word, protect this kind of landscape and protect the species that are living on it, because it is so rare, particularly in the British Isles.
Can you just tell us a bit now, because we're looking at these cows, can you just tell us a few numbers and facts about your cows?
Okay. I mean, just to say, first of all, the whole of the farm, there's about 1,200 acres altogether, and that's a mixture of, my mum and dad own some, or my mum as it is now. I own some in my own right, but I have about 6 other tenants as well, some of which are NGOs, some of which are private landlords. And so, you obviously have sort of that's different relationships with each one. But it's all very much upland limestone mainly. Almost every derogatory designation you can throw at a piece of land applies to the land that we have. So it's all SFA, it's less favoured area. Just all those different designations. In terms of cattle numbers, we're now up to, we started off with 20 belted Galloway heifers and a bull that first year in 2004, and now we average about 200 cattle on the herd on the farm at any one time. And we're calving about 65, but we keep all of the young stock for about 3 years because they're fattening very slowly, and we don't bull the heifers until into their 3rd year. So we always have quite a lot of young stock and followers on the farm. And as I said in the chat, extremely envious of you, Nick, that you're down to 0 sheep. We'll be lambing about 100 sheep this year. They're just about starting to lamb now. So that's one of the things we've done, which is to make the sheep farming much more natural, and so they're now lambing now when there is grass around. We're not using any concentrates whatsoever for the sheep enterprise, and so we lamb at this time of year, and the grass just sort of satisfies all their nutritional requirements. But so about 100 at the moment, and how many there'll be in the near future, I'm not too sure, but that's just part of the decision making process as we go forward.
There's just a couple of questions. So Phil's asking, can you just talk us through a bit of the great green hay strewing about in a bit more detail? So what time of year did you put it on?
Yeah,
did you get them to eat it?
Yeah. So what happens there is, so in that meadow, we would take a hay cut off it. And obviously, so it'd be sort of July, August time, really. And you have to sort of liaise with another farmer in the area who's got a particularly species rich meadow, and we'll have to coordinate all the timings so that we cut at the same time as they're going to cut. Obviously, a good weather window allows you to do that, and then it has to be brought quite quickly from that farm to us. We just take it onto the field, and we just literally spread it onto the scarified areas. So the scarifying is quite important, so that you're ensuring that any seed that does come out of the green hay you brought onto the field is getting to the soil. And that's pretty much it. You just leave it. You can turn stock into it because they can just actually help and tread it in and just move it around a little bit. So, but it's July, mainly August. I think it was actually August that we did it, but the normal time that you would be cutting hay. But it's the coordination with the other farmer that's the critical bit of it. And
another one, Judith, just asking about sheep, the infamous sheep. Okay. At the moment, on every farm at the moment, they're eating everything that possibly pops up. So, you've reduced numbers, but prior to that reduction, were you also starting to rotationally graze them, or what were you doing just to try and avoid sheep overgrazing?
We've never got into the sort of classic rotational grazing. I think we'd probably already reduced numbers of sheep fairly dramatically before we even knew what rotational grazing was, to be honest with you. So and if I'm being really honest, probably the only reason we keep any sheep is really from a sentimental reason, a bit of cultural heritage reason, a bit of the fact that my father and my both grandfathers have sort of farmed and shepherded the hills before us, and so we do try to probably keep the sheep for that reason. But but that was part of the, again, going back to the learning process. We were starting to see when we were grazing areas of land with the cattle, or more importantly, not grazing areas of land with the cattle, we were starting to see the benefits of that. On the converse of that, you start to see some of the impact of grazing, and I'm not having a go at sheep here, because in some instances they can play an important role, but you start to see the impact that grazing sheep at certain times of year has on the nature on the farm, and we were getting to the point where we didn't want to see that happen. The nature on the farm was becoming so important to us that we didn't want to just turn sheep into a field and literally take that crop of flowers off it within a week or so.
And I know we've got to move on to James. I'm just interested in, because sheep, I know they're not native to this country if we go back millennia, but a lot of your landscapes have evolved with sheep.
Yeah.
So is it that we just haven't got the balance right? Is it that they might fit better once the land is regenerated, or is it just the balance between sheep and cattle?
I think it is a balance. It's a real tricky one. I think it is a balance, and as I say, there are people doing brilliant conservation work, grazing work with sheep and certain sheep's breeds. I think from our perspective, and it's just got to the stage now where the amount of work that we're still putting into the sheep, is that worthwhile from a business perspective, or are we better just having another 5 cows than the sheep that we've got and making things much simpler? So I'm going to have to put that sort of sentimental bit to one side and that sort of cultural heritage, and just say, let's be a little bit more pragmatic about this, and cut our ties with the ovine species. I know that
beautifully onto James. He doesn't have such things on his farm.
No.
Thanks, Neil. That was great. And when we've at the end, well, towards the end, I want to come back to Gogglebox. So let's forget that. But
is that the penis piercing you were talking about?
No, the other thing.
All right.
James, on that note, can we hand over
Please
for you?
say sheep.
I hope you're talking about the sheep and not the piercings, but none of which I've got. Actually, we do have some sheep, not piercings. We've got like 9 Herdwick's lambing this year, so not a huge amount. But they don't belong to me; they belong to my son. So, kind of picked an easy native breed that we can just leave too. So, and they get fat very easily on our land because it's dairy ground, isn't it? Do you want to just tell us? Yeah, do you want to just tell us? And I don't, if you've got any pictures, just share them. I'll try and share. I've got 1 or 2 bits of before and after and stuff, really. So, James Robinson's our farm with my family here at Strictly, which is sort of southeast Cumbria. Anyone that knows, I've been on the railway on the main line. We're near Oxenholme, the Lake District, as they always say. We are about a mile from that. So fairly handy to town, fairly handy to Kendal, fairly handy to the motorway. It's interesting ground. It is, it's quite banky, as we call it. It's made up of like drumlins. So any of you that remember your GCSE geography with drumlins, and I don't think anyone ever mentions drumlins again after that, but we have quite a few of those on our farm, and that's kind of what our land is made up of. So it's like half an egg, if you imagine an egg cut through the middle, and the sort of shape of the drumlins are that sort of shape. So it's steep sided, soily tops, and then sort of wet rocky bit in the bottom, and that's what our farm's made up of, really. So we're fairly challenging land, but we can grow plenty of grass. We're organic. I've been organic for 18 years now. Family's actually been here farming at Strictly for almost 150 years, 148 years. So I'm the 5th generation and Robert's the 6th. So family is very important here, and that continuity is something that we sort of see in everything that we do. And that, of course, means that we then see the sort of future in nature as well as business and stuff as well. So when we're creating habitats or managing habitats, we're doing it very much for the future. So we're kind of lucky that we've got that tie to the thing, but you know, it does give us that extra sort of attachment to it, you might say. Yeah, so we're milking dairy shorthorns. We've got 130 milkers plus followers, so about 260-70 animals on farm. 300 acres is a farm, all grassland. I say all grassland, there's wood and there's hedges and there's wetland and becks and stuff, but yeah, we haven't got any arable or anything. We've always seen nature as sort of part of the farm, really. We've never thought of it as a separate thing. You know, we manage the hedges and have managed the hedges for a long time, for generations, really, in the sort of traditional way of hedge laying every 20 years. We don't flail any inside hedges, so just the roadside ones get flailed. And we do them as late as we can, so they're flailed in sort of February time, something like that. I'll just have a quick look while I'm talking, see if I've got any pictures of hedges. I don't think I have, maybe no. But anyway, but we've done various things as well on the farm. So the hedges are very much an important part of what we do on the farm. But that's part of the annual management. But then we've sort of created some habitats as well in and around the fields. So we've got like some wetlands, we've got ponds, we've fenced off some becks, we've we're kind of lucky really to come across some species rich hay meadow. We didn't actually have any at Strictly up until 5 years ago because we had got lost, you know, as every farm had done. It had been improved with fertilizers and ploughing post-war. So we kind of lost our traditional hay meadows that we would have had here, with mainly silage making, I suppose. But we next door came up for sale, 60 acre there. 11 acre of which was a species rich hay meadow in 2 fields. So we when we bought them, we actually got them registered as a species rich meadow, species rich grassland, because they weren't. So anyone else that bought it could have ploughed that land. There was no protection over it. So as soon as we got it designated as that, so I gave it some protection. We were then managing another 3 acres next door to those 2 fields in a way that they will now, or they are becoming species rich as well. And we're kind of doing that. It's a little bit like the green hay thing that Neil's done, but so when we're working our hay fields, so when we're mowing them, when we're scaling them, when we're rowing up, we just do the 2 established hay fields first, and then, you know, and then so you tend to scale grass 3 or 4 times probably before it's dry, don't you? So when we're doing that, we'll just do the 2 established fields first, and then do the other one, and all the hay seeds and all that sort of stuff that's stuck to your machines drops into the field. So rather than actually physically putting any seeds on, we've kind of done it by default, and it's worked tremendously well, actually. And like Neil said, just keeping the grazing off these fields means that stuff gets a chance to grow. So this year was the 4th year that we haven't grazed it, I think, early on in the spring. And we've had orchids coming up in there. Well, I said this year, last summer, yeah. So we've had orchids come up in there that we've never seen any before in there. So just giving stuff a chance to grow before a big mouth, be it a sheep or a cow, comes and eats it, is you know, just give it a bit of chance sometimes, and you're amazed at what does come. Yellow rattle is probably the most important thing, because once you get yellow rattle in, like Neil says, it's a parasitic plant, so it basically saps the energy of all the really dominant grass species and stuff that might be in there, and allows other smaller herbs and stuff that are quite important, quite diverse, gives them a chance to grow and stuff. So and that's an annual, and it grows anywhere. It was, you know, where we park our mower after we've mown it up in the field up by the buildings on very, you know, quite intensive sort of managed grassland stuff, and wherever the mower's parked, so there's just yellow rattle comes up. So yeah, it's a very easy grown grass, but you got to be careful that it doesn't get too it can almost get too dominant. So you just got to time your cutting sometimes as well. So rather than cutting in mid-July every year, if you're getting too much yellow rattle in, you can always pull it forward a couple of weeks so that the yellow rattle hasn't become quite so dominant. Sorry, I got onto a hay thing. I was going to put some before and afters on, wasn't I? Right, I'll go share screen, see if I can do this. I'm terribly organised, you see.
That picture, James, of your you as a little boy is good, isn't it?
Yeah, I haven't got that one. Sorry, I couldn't find it. I know, and plus it's just Right, hang on. Yeah, I know. I really should have done that, but I couldn't find it. Right, go on, share screen, and that one. There we go. So that is so that's one of our hair meadows I took last year. So that, I mean, that just shows how what sort of dominance you get from one species. But that's oxeye daisy. But you can see in the bottom there'll be loads of different types of grasses and stuff. Yellow have actually gone over by the time the oxeye daisies are coming out, anyways. But in this field, so there's another hair meadow there next door. You can see over there. So there's, I think, just over 100 species of vascular plants in these two. When we bought it, there'll be a few more now. We haven't had it counted, but we've got a real bit. It was a bit patchy when we bought it. So now we've managing it specifically for the species-rich grassland. It has meant that we've ended up with, well, we've got 13 acres now of this real species-rich hair meadow. So and we're managing that particularly for that as well. So we're very lucky to have that.
And in terms of the hay you're cutting off it, so are you selling it all almost as green hay to someone else, or you're feeding?
No, we haven't ever offered it. So we just basically, I mean, our calves absolutely love it. I mean, our vet hates us feeding it because she wants us to feed a lot of chopped straw to the calves, and doesn't. But they just love this hay. They do really well off it. They just so all the they get ad lib hay basically from birth. And then right through then till, well, some of them get put onto more of a silage mix, but depending on numbers and stuff through into some of them, and some of the big heifers will be, in-calf heifers and stuff will be on it as well. And another thing as well, so underneath hay racks and what have you, under the troughs and stuff, you get all that sort of small stuff, the small hay seeds and what have you. We gather that up, bag it up. Sounds quite sad, but we can bag it up, and then wherever we've got bits of bare ground that need some seeds, whether that's on the hay meadows or it's anywhere else around the farm, where you've had ring feeders, that sort of thing, maybe, we just sprinkle that on, and then you get loads of stuff growing. Plantain seems to be the one that dominates on that, but then you get loads of plantain on, and it's free seed. So it's a great way to sort of, it's expensive seed, is sort of species rich seed, so you can soon make a bag full of that. Right, I'm just going to see if I can find some more pictures. Sorry. So yeah, so if I close that down. Right, so we fenced off some becks. Right, so that is a beck that was straightened out probably in the 1960s. I think it used to go way down here.
The photo hasn't changed. You might have to reshare your screen.
Oh, and it. Hang on. So if I stop share. Can you see it now, the beck?
Yep.
Right. Yeah, so the beck used to go around the corner around there a bit. So this was probably done in the 1960s, something like that. Straightened out and then grazed, as you can see, grazed from both sides. We put an electric fence down just so we can manage it a little bit easier, but the cows basically used to come into the beck for water. So this is taken about September time. You can see a bit of the white water crowfoot growing in the bottom, but there's not much really growing in there and stuff. Still very clean water, but you can see all the sort of the banking sides getting dragged in and stuff. Every time the cows go down, they sort of push a bit in with their feet. There's probably bits of muck here because cows always crap in the water, don't they, when they're going for a drink. So I mean, I was doing something with Nick the other day, and yeah, this is sort of seen as the norm. We didn't really see that this was anything wrong with this. This was the water source for the cows, so that was the kind of what we had to do. This is a mile from any mains water, so we didn't have any other choice but to use the water for the cow grazing. So if I go on to the next one this is probably the best way to do it.
But also, and I suppose the challenge is it's been from a disease perspective, hasn't it, or disease risks for cattle to try and prevent them from grazing or drinking out of rivers rather than from a biodiversity.
Yeah, that's it. And I mean, it's there's just so many wins, and I'm gonna have to I thought I might have been able to just flick from one to the other, but it's not going to let me, I don't think. I'll have to go to screen share. Sorry. and that's what it is now. So it was taken, the first one, if you remember, was taken in September. This is taken exactly 12 months to the day after.
Wow.
So we've put a fence up both sides. We've given it a bit more on this side here, just because there's a bit more diversity and stuff around on here, and we needed sort of access through here. So all this is growing within a year, and it's all great habitat for, you know, for voles and what have you, in this longer grass and stuff here. But then the bank inside, you know, is probably the most important bit. So there's no bare soil there now. So whenever it floods, which we do get some big floods down around us, it's not going to scour that out at all. There's no muck from the cows coming in. Look in the back, we've got all that whitewater crowfoot growing in there now, you know, big massive beds of it. And it makes it look like there's a lot more water than there was in the previous one. The beck levels could be slightly higher, but what it is, it's holding it back a little bit. So it's just created a bit more water depth in there. And that in turn then is a good habitat for, you know, for invertebrates, crayfish, for small fish, which are then in, you know, food for dipper, kingfisher, otters, or heron, little egrets. Liz, we talked about them before. So we've got, you know, so that any amount of stuff is can then feed on the small stuff that's in there. And then you can't really see, but somewhere on there, there's one there. So that's an alder growing there. So there's already within 12 months some natural regeneration of a tree species coming in here as well. Alder is a particular species that does really well down our backs. This is an alder in the middle here. This whitewater crowfoot is doing so well in here. Yes, it's because of the clean water, but then also it's when cows come in and they're coming down this banking and they're standing in there. Whitewater crowfoot is quite easily broken off. It's got very sort of shallow roots really to it, just attaches to stones and bits of gravel and stuff. So whenever a cow comes in, it dislodges it and it won't get a chance to grow. But with no cattle coming in there, it's got a chance to establish and grow, and this has grown within 12 months. So that again, that's oxygenating the water. In about May time, so in about a month's time from now, it'll be white in here, so the little flowers come up, and it's just incredible to see. So to see that change from the previous one to this one within 12 months, that kind of makes you think, I want to fence some becks off.
James, can I just ask a question, James?
Crack on.
I mean, the transformation is amazing and it's brilliant to see. In terms of that's actually in the river, what will that be sort of habitat for? What kind of things will live in there?
So, I mean, our main sort of, in terms of fish, we've got brown trout. So we did we haven't got any salmon on our beck. We never ever have had salmon. There's a paper mill about 5 miles downstream, and they put a leap in there. You know, sorry, a fish pass up with the leap about 30 years ago. We've never ever had salmon come up. But that might be something to do with numbers declining rather than anything to do with our beck. So we've got we've got a real good fish count in here. So we do work with local wildlife groups and stuff. So we do work with the South Cumbria Rivers Trust, do fish counts and things. We took one in here, and I think, is it 20 yards or 30 yards you got to do, and there was 55 trout in, and it was basically from like there to there. And of course you tend to miss probably more than you're getting, so that's with the electro fishing stuff. So really, really healthy that way. Healthy number of invertebrates, feed the fish. We've got the native white claw crayfish in here as well, so it's one of the few river systems without any American signal crayfish in. So it's really important that we do look after the water quality as well as an industry up and down all these catchments. And then we've got dipper. I'm on a bridge taking this picture. There's a dipper nest underneath the bridge. We've got kingfisher. We've got otter, and otters were extinct when I was a kid, and now they're in every county in England, and that is because of the quality of the water, and the quality of the water has got better because farmers have stopped using some of the dangerous pesticides and what have you, through legislation, but also through protecting the water. So it just shows what we can do as an industry, really.
And the question I'm guessing you get asked if you showed this picture in a farming community would, how much are you being paid for that?
zip out. Nothing, absolutely nothing at the moment for this, but we might hopefully get this under stewardship. So this bit, but even then you're going to get very, very little. That there you're not going to get anything for, basically. That there you're probably going to get a bit as a strip, but we're just going to allow it to do its own thing. But this bit here is very wet in here. You've got some wind bushes there, and so we're not losing any ground, really. We're not losing any productive ground, and it's far better, I think, to sort of let this scrub up with the natural regeneration that's in there, and maybe provide a bit of shelter for the stock that's next door as well, and then shelter, of course, and habitat for wildlife. And it's a corridor, so all this wood down the bottom here, that's an ancient oak woodland down there. In behind me, where I'm stood, there's a good riparian strip of alders either side of the beck. So this bit I always thought was a bit of any creatures, any like the kingfisher, dipper, otters, they were running the gauntlet through this bit. So I always thought it was it was just a bit of an open ground. Now we've sort of allowed it to scrub up a bit with this longer grass and the natural regeneration that's in there. It gives them a bit of cover, and it links up those habitats of this ancient oak woodland and the better bit of strip of beck further up. I'm just going to go on to the next one.
But James, just going back to Liz's question, that there's a huge value in that in what you're doing there, isn't there?
There is yes, there is, and we would do it anyways. You see, that's the thing. We would, I'd love, I spent my entire childhood pissing about in becks. Just walking up and down the beck, tipping stones over, looking for crayfish. And my summer holidays were, in wet trainers in a beck bottom, pretty much. So I just love all that, anyways, and I love seeing what there was. And I would have, I would never have believed that there would have been otter and kingfish around that when I was a kid, because they weren't around then. So once you sort of, I'm a bit of a nature nut and I love seeing it, and I don't know a huge amount about the stuff. I'm not a botanist, I'm not a zoologist. I just know the stuff that's, I know a bit about the stuff that lives on our farm and like seeing it and like changing the way that it's there. Value for me, I think, is mental health for farmers. I think it's great to see what you can do, and it's a really, really positive thing. Community value is great, because so we know there's a footpath down through that wood, so we know people go through there because it's nice bluebells and they always come down to the beck and what have you, so they see the stuff on there. So as a community benefit, it's great, and then it's great for our industry to sort of show that what farmers can do. But then also it adds value, it adds a story to the stuff that we're selling. So the milk that we sell from our farm, it's organic at the moment, that's been for the last 18 years. And we sell out probably 30–40% of our milk at the moment is going to Martin Gott, a local cheesemaker, and he's linked up with us because of the way we farm. And he likes the way that we farm. He likes the milk is great, but then it's also everything else. It's more than just the milk. It's the whole story that's attached to it and everything that we are doing.
Yeah, it's just because it's a little bit like when the water comes through your farm, it'll have that great strip through your farm, and it's the same here, I suppose. And then it goes to the next farm and the next farm, and they might not be on the same in the same headspace really around it. So I guess my question is, if it was paid, if we got more money for it, would then more watercourses be so much better? Because I think, and it goes back to when we first started doing all this. It started with us with HLS, and if we hadn't done that, I'm not sure we would be as far on. And it may be, Neil, it's the same with you and the limestone stuff. It's just bringing everyone else. I don't know what you think, Liz.
I suppose it's that's what the next stage, isn't it? The landscape recovery is looking at, isn't it? Which is connectedness between.
That's what I would like. See, our beck, I would love to see every farmer, or at least the majority of farmers, on our beck. And it's not a very long catchment, isn't our beck? From top to bottom, I bet it's 15, 18 miles, something like that. So there's not a huge, there'd be probably 100 farmers or something like that, maybe on that, that have any sort of bank, as it were, on the beck. If 50 of them farmers would join together and were on some sort of scheme, even if it was just to benefit 50 yards either side of the beck with, we've been careful where you were spreading him up by fencing bits off from stock, it would just make a massive difference. And you could soon, a beck's an easy thing to join, to link farms together with some sort of cooperation, and it doesn't take a huge amount. And if the funding's there for the capital works, for the fencing, for the solar troughs, and I'll just solar powered thing, and I'll see if I can share this sort of thing. So we fenced off our becks, and we've been able to do that. Yes, we needed the water for the cattle still, for the cows. So we've got 2 of these systems in, one down the bottom end and one at the top. We've got about 1.5 miles of beck. So that's pumping the water out from the beck. It's a very simple sort of system. There's a couple of batteries inside there, big 12-volt batteries. These solar panels then discharge the batteries, which then run 12-volt pumps through a pressure vessel, which then gets, on a pressurized system out to the cows. So it's we're still using the water from the beck, so we're not paying for that. We're not paying for any energy for the pumps. They're really reliable. They've been in a couple of years now and haven't had a problem. And it's just using a bit of technology to make things better. So we can shut that down. Make things better. We've been able to manage our cows better through using a bit of simple technology that wasn't available 20 years ago.
But just to come in on your point, Nick, it's and Liz, to get some collaboration which work along the whole length of that beck shouldn't be that difficult, really, from a practical perspective. And I think if you went to the vast majority of farmers along that river and that catchment and said, this is what we're trying to do, this is what we're trying to achieve, and here's the money to you all to be able to achieve that, then that shouldn't be too difficult to make happen. And I think this is where I was sort of hoping where Elms and policy were going to take us, where not only is it sort of quite easy to define what it is you're trying to achieve, but then to provide some collaboration between those farmers to make that happen should be possible. And it's just a bit of a shame that we've arrived at a little bit of a place where we're not too sure what it is we're trying to achieve, either from a government or a farming perspective. So we are in a bit of a hinterland at the moment, a bit of no man's land, and that's just a bit of a shame from my perspective, because it can't be that difficult.
Well, there's Bill White's put in the chat in terms of they're setting up a farmer cluster on the River Thames catchment to do a similar thing. So to try and this coordination idea of, but his point is that he thinks we need to reward people to get the real momentum going. I mean, and I think there's the positive feedback, isn't there? But also we've got many generations of being paid to do stuff, and that's a really difficult behaviour to break.
We've been getting paid to do stuff here. Yes, we've had the BPS and the single farm payment, but then we've also been paid to look after our hedges too. And yes, that little section of beck isn't getting paid for at the moment, but the hay meadows are. That bit of fenced off beck got funded directly through Danny Teasdale from the Ullswater CIC with the Environment Agency. So there's funding specifically for fencing off. And if I just go back and just share that screen again for that one there. So that is just going to just have so much benefit for, so when it floods, tiny little bits of stuff will get caught in here. So that's going to slow the water down more than if it was a bare bank. And whether you're going to get erosion or not, it's just going to slow down the water flow. It's even this little bit here is filtering and it's only a pasture this side, so we're not going to be putting any slurry on or anything. But the runoff from the cow pee and the muck and stuff that there might have been if they're grazing there is going to get filtered even through that small amount of grass. It's then creating shade for water quality as well, for the invertebrates and stuff that are in there. And everything that's living in there then helps the water quality as well. So we're slowing the flow down a bit. We're filtering any nutrients out that might be running off. We're creating shade, we're creating habitat, and that's all and that's all just from sticking a fence up and a reasonably priced solar trough, which then has meant that our management of the cows has been so much easier. You know, we're not now wasting energy on the cows with them walking backwards and forwards to walk to the beck. We're taking the water to the cows, so it's just a win-win.
And as you've identified, you mean there's funding streams, isn't there? So it's not like we're not necessarily expecting everybody to. Sorry, to start this again. There's funding available for solar pumps. There's funding available for fences. Do you mean? And it is there now. It's through countryside stewardship. There's capital items. There's catchment sensitive farming. You can engage with all sorts. But the question is, it's still about having that vision, isn't it? Do you mean you love that beck and you wanted to do different things to it? But I suppose I'm interested in how it's that, and both of you have multi-generational ties to your land. It's legacy, isn't it? It's the next generation. So you're in a very, not unique, but do you mean you're in a very interesting place? But how do we get other people going, I suppose?
I think for me, it's seeing the before and after type of thing, and it's seeing the difference that we can make. Not everything has to have a monetary value attached to it. It's great if it does, and that might be the thing that people, that might be the hook that people have to use to get them in, as it were, or to get people in. But I think we've got to see beyond, monetary value for that piece of land. So yeah, you might be a income foregone or whatever it might be on that little stretch of rough land, which is going to be nothing. It's going to be 20 quid, 30 quid a year. So that isn't going to be enough for people to bother. So you've got to give them more than that, and it's got to be. You've got to see the community benefit, the wider benefit to everybody, and then just the benefit to you and your mental health and all your family that can see that. And just by doing that simple little thing, you can see what a difference you can make. And as farmers, we are really, really privileged that we are able to do that. Landowners, whether we are owners or tenants, it's not as easy sometimes, but just by, if you get the landlord out and show them what you want to do, give them a vision as well, it's going to be far better for their ground as well. So I think just have a bit of a plan and go and see stuff and then come home and see what you can do on your own and see the wider benefit, I think.
I think for me, James, and you've said it, is just fencing off a little bit of river like that has provided and produced, if that's the right expression, a huge amount of public goods. It's cleaned water. It's provided more habitats. There's more biodiversity, and so from my perspective, I completely get that it's not necessarily all about a monetary value. But if government and policy is trying to get farmers to do more of this, because not everybody's engaged in it in the same way that you are, then there's got to be some reflection in, and it's not about taking that out of production. It's about saying what you're doing there is providing public goods, and there's no reason why you shouldn't be rewarded for that. There's no reason why you shouldn't get paid for providing those public goods, because somebody is saving somewhere further down the line or somewhere down the river, because it's cleaner water, cleaner air, cleaner and greater amounts of habitat. So you should get paid for that. And if government could go to every farmer on that beck and say, well, you're going to get X amount for providing those public goods, then I think there would be engagement from farmers. Unfortunately, that just isn't there at the moment.
And do you think the money, obviously the money from government is always, it always has a ceiling on it that's fairly low. The budget is always getting pinched from, for health or for policing or whatever it might be. The private funding, then, do you see that as a good thing, or do you see that it may be a hindrance to new people coming on the land? It might be a hindrance for the estates throwing people off or whatever it might be.
I haven't seen any evidence of that hindrance as yet. In fact, from our perspective and our own personal perspective, I think when we look to the future, I'm almost thinking private finances is almost looking more attractive and almost looking a little bit more guaranteed isn't the right word, but I'd be quite excited and quite interested in working with a company, for example, who say, yeah, okay, we'll pay you for delivering a certain amount of public goods from this, whether that's biodiversity or habitat or whatever. and entering into a similar kind of agreement to what I would do with government. I'm not quite sure what's going to happen in the future in terms of government, and there could quite well, there'll definitely be a change of government in the next few years, and I'm not necessarily convinced with what I'm hearing from Labour on this particular subject. But so, you know, it's a little bit of sort of taking my own destiny or our own destiny in our own hands and saying, let's make a business for ourselves and let's get into a contract with somebody who really gets it, really knows what they're wanting to achieve from this, and they get something out of it as well, and the money they pay you is they get some value for money for that. So I think we're looking at that really seriously at the moment, and just over the last week or so we've seen evidence that there's a real appetite amongst some of the some business and some, you know, some of the big money organizations out there, the financial organizations, where they're saying there's almost a bit of a shift afoot, and I really hope I'm right in saying that, where they're getting into nature. It's not just about climate, it's about nature, and it's about a combination of the two. We've got to do something about this. We've got to do something fairly quickly about the two of those, and business, I think, are hungry to get involved, and I hope they are, because that's what will make a seismic shift, in a necessary seismic shift.
And their motivation is very similar to James's, is that it's part of a story, isn't it? So, there's a grey area that is the greenwashing, but this is about working with businesses that you share a similar vision with to help them achieve their social responsibility or training or access to land or whatever it happens to be.
Yeah. No, it is, and you know, it's like you say, it's that shared vision, it's that shared appetite for seeing better biodiversity, better nature, and entering into a world where we're not impacting on it within our business, either whether that's food production or whether it's energy production or whatever. It's a case of saying, you know, we've got to strive for a better future than what we're doing at the moment, and it is that shared vision that you just mentioned.
And I suppose, Nick, we've discussed or had previous conversations about the balance, isn't it, between engaging with corporates and also seeing, and then sort of being them, allowing them to do other stuff because they're engaging with some farmers. What are you thinking about government engagement versus commercial?
I think the commercial will be inevitable, but I think if a local business to here came and said, say a local business that made wheelbarrows, say, and they said, we cannot get rid of any of our carbon. We've maxed out on the carbon, you know, we can't do anything within our business. We need to offset some. That would be my, I would happily work with someone locally. So on this call today, there was Unilever, Danone, all these big, massive American companies. And that's when I think, oh, this is a bit greenwashy. And I think as farmers, we need to be more at the table. So there was loads of speakers at this thing today. I'm rabbiting on about this thing, but there's loads of speakers. I was the one farmer. And that's the danger, that the corporate world are driving it forward, and we're kind of maybe slow to the party, resistant to the party, and whether you agree with it or not, I think it's going to happen.
I don't think we're resistant or slow. Is it not just that there's been no, and there isn't a mechanism yet, is there, for an individual small farmer, you know, and small could be anything under 1,000 acres, couldn't it, on sort of a corporate scale, but you know, how do we access that sort of, you know, because there's billions and billions out there, isn't there? I mean, the government fund is peanuts compared to private.
But part of it is it's all about a carbon calculator and your carbon footprint. But as we all know, there's a whole massive, you know, biodiversity, water, all that kind of thing that isn't really taken into account. And I just wonder whether farmers were missing a trick to say, fair enough, because on paper, an intensive chicken farm is much better with a carbon calculator, but we don't look at the true cost accounting of pollution, quality of the food, all that kind of stuff. So I just wonder whether we're kind of being shoved down this carbon route, and it's like being loaded up into a trailer, isn't it? With a big stick.
I think you're right, Nick. I think the biodiversity thing has been overlooked, and the two have to go in sort of parallel together. But I think what you also said is absolutely true in terms of farmers have to be at the table, and I think we should look at this as an opportunity to have a slightly more varied income, but we've got to be there and saying this is a huge opportunity for farming, because we can provide biodiversity, we can sequester carbon, and we can do that alongside food production, and the food production element of it as well. We've got to do it in a different way, just so that we're not emitting all the same carbon that we're doing at the moment and destroying the biodiversity. So it's a kind of a win-win situation, but at the same time, at the end of it, you've got a portfolio of incomes that are coming from the production of the food, the production of biodiversity, if production is the right word, and also the sequestering of carbon. And so, but we've got to be at that table to make that, to put our case forward, and we've almost got to be going to government as an industry and saying this is what we can achieve, this is what we can do, and we want X money for that. And whether that comes from government or from private finance, we're not really that bothered, or it can come from a combination of the two, but we almost need to go to them with a business proposal to saying that we can achieve all that, but that's alongside food production.
So can you
sorry, go on.
I was going to say, so who is it that we need to go to government then? Do we need farming leaders to sort of step up and start saying the right things?
I would say so, yeah. I think we're missing an opportunity at the moment, and there's a lot of the farming community who are on board with what I've just said, and the emphasis has been pushed back in the direction of the food production, which has just derailed all the sort of ELMS stuff, because there's arguments saying we've got to concentrate entirely on food security, which I don't necessarily agree to entirely. Obviously, food is important, but we've still got these massive issues that are above that, which is climate change and nature's recovery. So, and the food security element just sits below that, but feeds into that. But yeah, farmer leaders are the people, but we've got to get them on board with it and get them to see that it's a huge opportunity for the agricultural world and the agricultural industry.
Because I think that
No, I just think that I sort of flip-flop in this sort of like group activity, let's go, let's march on wherever is, but or actually it's also about local activism, isn't it? So it is about a bit like it's like landscape recovery, or working within your parish or county or whatever to make a difference where you are. Because I get slightly amazed by the scale of it if I think about it too much. I mean, the amount of stuff we've got to solve is humongous.
Yeah.
So I've got to start small and build up.
But just going on water quality, like United Utilities, oh my word, they've got big problems. So and just thinking of James's Beck, that's if that was clean, that's worth a fortune. And I think, are we being hoodwinked in, you know, when you look at the payments on stewardship and stuff, that they are quite minuscule in comparison to I think, yeah, private companies. I mean, if you try and find an ecologist now, they cost a fortune. and it's are we kind of not being savvy enough as farmers to realize what public goods are actually worth? That's the bit that we're so, a lot of the farming community is hell bent on food production, and are we missing a trick?
I think we are, Nick. Yeah, I think we are, and I think the right word is savvy. You know, whether we're not quite grasping the opportunity whilst it's there, and that concerns me. And I think, coming back to Lizzie's point about the localism, I think that's the beauty of potentially, and I'm not saying this is the nirvana, but potentially going out there and securing a deal with somebody for your own individual farm, which has its own individual habitats that it could create and its own individual nuances, there's a lot that appeals to me about that, because you are just entering into contract to deliver something on your farm, and potentially if you do that right across the country, and each farmer does that, then you've got a system that works, but it's on a local level, but it's working right across the whole country, but it's valuing what each individual farm has.
Yeah, and I think some of that is that it's the level of knowledge, aren't we, that we're expecting farmers to have in terms of being able to deal with this. It's a very, I don't mean to be patronised at all, but in terms of, we're generally faced with a day-to-day job that's quite busy, and we're being asked to look at legislation and different environment schemes and different funding pots and understand how to engage with corporate. Do you mean it's a lot?
Yeah,
I think there's an opportunity. Sorry, I think there's an opportunity for, for having brokers. I mean, there's been brokers between farmers and buyers and sellers for years, and whether it's for quota, whether it's for feed or milk or whatever. So I think there's there is an opportunity for someone in the middle, because we can't, we can't go to Unilever like you're talking to today. They can say, oh, by the way, I want to fence my beck off. Can I have three?
Try it.
But but then if there was 100 farms went and said, we want to fence the beck off, we want to improve the water quality, can we have X amount, then it would be more of a proposition, wouldn't it?
Yeah. I think also, Liz, from what you just said, it's a seismic shift in mindset, isn't it? And we've all talked about where our difficulties, or the difficulties and the mindset within the farming community, and it is very much, and has been, and it's been set in stone almost since the end of the Second World War, that's about food production. And I think we put ourselves in a position as a community of farmers back after the war, which was, let's solve this problem that we've got at the moment, and a huge problem it was in terms of lack of food, and let's not put ourselves in that position again. But I think the challenges that we're facing now are very different ones, and they are the challenges of climate change and nature's decline, and I think we can almost be, where we're the food heroes at the time, we can be the heroes again, but it's on climate change and it's on nature's recovery, where food production runs alongside that. So but it does require that mind shift and shift in mindset, and that's a lot easier said than done.
And a set of skills, and as James says, some of those skills can be brought in. It doesn't have to be welding in the morning and ecological monitoring in the afternoon. It can be, but but part of that is an attitude towards collaboration, isn't it? Again, which isn't not everybody's ready for that yet.
Yeah, but I think we have to, as an industry as well, as individuals, maybe stop seeing anyone that comes on the farm as like an inspector or someone that's checking up on us, or is going to grass us up or whatever. There's any amount of groups, so wildlife trusts, rivers trusts, individuals. There's a bloke that lives like 2 miles away that's done some, not even just half a mile away, that's been doing some moth counts and stuff here and stuff, just because he's been doing it in his garden, but he kind of wants to get out and do more, so he can come and do some moth counts on ours. And then I'll drop her name in it. Claire will look at dung beetles and stuff here. Just people that have such a passion for stuff that we as farmers don't get a chance to sort of learn about. But then once you get the experts on looking at moths, looking at dung beetles, doing fish counts in the river, you then can't get excited about it, because you recognise it, you can see it, and you can see the change that you as individuals can make on this little tiny thing that you probably didn't even know was there.
And that's giving you interaction with a greater number of people. You're bringing a community of people together who are all interested and engaged in the same kind of stuff. And you've spoken about mental health a couple of times, James, and it all just helps with that kind of thing, and just gives you somebody to talk to, share your successes with, and that must be good for you.
Oh yeah. I mean, we've even me and my wife are sure we've started doing river fly counting now. So we'll get in the beck and we'll do the little shuffle in the bottom of the gravel and catch stuff in the net, and then tip it in a white tub, and then count the individual invertebrates there is in there and stuff. And it's stuff they didn't even know was there. I mean, some of it, they call them olives. They're just tiny. They're just like little slivers in the thing. There's hundreds of them, but they're only there because of the clean water and stuff. So until you sort of start tipping that stone up, you never really know what's there.
And that's one of the things, just on the nature side of things, seeing things for the first time that you've never seen on your on your farm. Well, you know, in my case, I don't even know they existed anyway. Never mind, knew existed on our farm, and just to see them the first time and think the changes we've made on the farm have resulted in that, giving that particular thing, whatever it is, an opportunity, and like you say, that means such a lot.
There's a few points within the Q&A. So one about sort of biodiversity net gain. I don't know whether either of you have engaged with. There are brokers in that now in terms of offering it as a service to developers. Have investigated that at all, or?
Yeah, we had the what are they called? There's that bank.
Tridos.
No, it's a something bank. It's a something.
Environment Bank.
Yes.
Envirobank. Yeah, always Environment Bank. Anyway, whatever. But yeah, so we had them on doing a talk actually on our farm, and it was too good. You know, they kind of want a blank canvas, so they want a really intensive green field or a really stale sort of arable field, and they want minimum of 10 hectares, so like 25 acres pretty much, in one lump, and then they're wanting it for 30 years and stuff. So it didn't sit with what we would do, and then basically people buy credits off them to then, and there must be a huge amount of money in it as well, because it was fairly big money they were talking of, so there must be a huge amount of money in it for them. I hope there is a different sort of broker in the middle at some point that will be able to do, you know, a more focused approach on an individual farm rather than, you know, just a 25-acre lump.
I think that's
the idea of the traditional livestock market. All of a sudden, there'll be an office there that, instead of just marketing your lambs, they'll also be marketing your biodiversity. I think it's interesting.
Take them a bunch of flowers and say, "Oh, look at my yellow rattle."
Unfortunately, by the time you've taken it to them, you've destroyed it. But other than that, you're fine. And a question also is, I think would fulfill it, self-fulfilling, but is there a lack of knowledge, understanding with farmers in regards to biodiversity? Is a question. Mixed.
Yes, I would have said there is.
Yeah.
Some, you know, but very mixed. I think it's just like any society. Some people are interested in it, some people aren't. But I think we, you know, and you kind of need to be interested in it in some way, I think, to sort of to start wanting to change it. So I think just spending a bit of time trying to, you know, if there's a little bird that keeps, every time you drive your tractor down that lane, there's a little bird that keeps popping out, or just trying to see what it is, you know, and see why it's there and nested in that hedge and not somewhere else or something, and just get interested in the stuff that is around you to start with, you know, the stuff that you can change really.
But having said that, Jen, I think you're right, and but I think for me, I don't think I was interested at all in nature. I wasn't interested in that. I was just interested in farming. I was interested in breeding mule gimmer lambs, and that's all I thought about, and that's all I did. And like I say, it's when you go back to that Limestone Country project. So it's actually getting involved with that that sort of made us, and the penny dropping and saying, actually, how we manage our land actually makes a difference to what nature we get on the land. And it was that started the journey, if that's the word you want to use, to where we're at now. And prior to that, I didn't have any interest in it. You know, we did some stuff that I don't even want to say we did, like draining and what have you, on the farm, which we thoroughly regret now. And that was just because that was where my mind was then, and it's changed as a result of being involved with that project at the time.
So I think as a take home, we could send a quick email to our local wildlife trust. That's, do you mean, so bringing other people onto farm, isn't it, to this level of, to try and get
I think most county groups, or Cumbria Wildlife Trust or Lincolnshire or whatever, I'm sure they will have a farming officer, someone that would engage with agriculture. Yeah, I'm nearly sure they will. Even, you know, and it might be quite a recent post, because they've realised that the only way that they can get wildlife outside of their reserves improved is by working with farmers. So,
what's interesting, because I've chatted with our local wildlife trust, and trying to do some stuff with them. And my initial perception was they won't want to speak to me because I'm a farmer and they'll think we're really bad. And that's terrible. So you sort of have to go past your own perception, don't you? And just send them an email and see what they say.
Yeah, I think that's really important, Liz, because I think I think there is a lot of organisations out there who are really wanting to work with farmers in terms of nature, and national parks are one, AONBs are another, wildlife trusts, woodland trusts, river trusts, etc., etc. And a lot of them have pots of money that they can use and on individual farms or on catchments. So it's well worth getting in touch with any of them. And obviously, whilst to me, I've got to talk about farming in protected landscapes. So if you are in a national park or an AONB, there is money available through those schemes, which has been seen as a really positive scheme to get some money out of for delivering for nature and for climate. So get in touch.
And the hope is, my bias is that the funding could also be in less beautiful bits of the country.
Yeah.
Just saying.
Yeah, no, yeah, absolutely. And that's where your wildlife trusts and your woodland trusts and your river trusts come in. So,
well, James is in the middle of a national park and an AOB, aren't you, James?
Yeah, so we can see 2 national parks and an AONB, and we get nout.
Look on longingly.
Longingly, all the money pouring over the fences in the opposite direction. But yeah, but then we haven't been restricted over the years by planning and that sort of thing that national parks have, and we don't get snowed under with tourists either. So
that's just not true about the planning, James. National parks aren't restricted.
I'm just trying to create some benefits for not being a national park.
Positivity.
Sorry.
It will come to the. Don't worry, James. They will come. It will come to the less beautiful bits.
Liz, we're running out of time. Can we have 2 minutes on Gogglebox and wild owls, Neil? I don't want to miss this.
Okay.
No penises. No penises.
Right, okay.
You keep bringing it up. He's not talking about it. You are. Just saying.
You keep bringing it up. Yeah. No. Thanks, Nick. Yeah, we were on. We had a little section on Wild Isles, the supposed 6th episode of Wild Isles that just went out on iPlayer. Just to say, it was a hugely positive experience for us, and all the response we've had since has been really positive as well. So we just hope that it makes a difference to nature. We just hope that it has an influence on some of the farmers, some of the land managers across the country, and like I say, it was a pleasure to be involved with. But then the real big story was that my phone started flashing on Friday night because it was appearing on Gogglebox, and obviously when you're on Gogglebox, you know you've made it. So it was happy days.
And what did they say?
They were thankfully quite complimentary towards the little bit that they put on, and it was actually really genuinely, it was actually interesting to see what sort of the general public sort of how they were perceiving that edition of Wild Isles, and it really was one of genuine compassion and a real care for what was going on. And going back to your point about being savvy and not missing a trick, it's there is a real compassion out there for wildlife, and there's a real compassion for farmers working with wildlife and working amongst nature. So let's try and take that opportunity and sort of take advantage of that, I guess. But yeah, it was really interesting to see that, and their response was positive as well.
Well, that kind of segues slightly. James, can you just say a few words about Nature Friendly Network?
Yeah, so Nick's wearing the same top. Yours is on a different side.
Mine's a coat. I've got 2.
Double A. So I am the vice chair of England's steering group for Nature Friendly Farming Network, and Neil and Nick are both on the steering group as well. We're a very diverse mix of farmers from upland farms right down to sort of huge arable estates, smallholders, everything. 2,000 English farmer members, I think, and about 4,000 public members in England. And then we also have a Scotland group, a Northern Ireland group, and a Welsh group under a UK umbrella. And we are a network of farmers basically learning from each other, peer-to-peer learning with other farmers. We are lobbying in government, higher at the top end of government as well, and all the devolved governments as well. It's not just through Westminster. And it's a very fast growing organisation, network of people, and we're just aiming for the right type of farming, really. We see nature friendly farming, and it was mentioned a few times on that Wild Eyes, wasn't it? So it was great to sort of get that in there. It is the future. You know, I think on the back of my shirt it says nature farming is the future. It was probably back to front, was it? I don't know. But yeah, so it's it's just a great movement, and it's free to join. It is free, and you get like e-newsletters and everything.
Because part of it, I think you two will have both had a bit of this, is it can be, when you start doing things differently, it can be slightly lonely in your local area. So it is just a good gang of like-minded people that you can get a bit of therapy from as well.
Yeah.
Liz, I'm just looking at the time, 2 minutes.
Yeah, we're done. So thank you very much. So
yeah,
Nick,
it's marvelous. Thank you.
Thank your key point, one of your key points.
My key points is that I think we need to be at the table next to Unilever and Danone and all those people.
Just don't be rude about them this time.
No, I don't mind. No,
Sorry,
I think we have to. Don't you agree? I think we whenever you get someone in to do a job, the bill is always huge, isn't it? Like if you get a plumber, electrician, you think, oh my word, that's a lot of money. And then like we've asked these two chaps to come on here tonight, and the whole kind of carbon calling thing, like we're doing it for the movement and to kind of push on and ultimately to make the climate of the world a better place. And I think we need that's got a value, and I think we're so obsessed with producing food, we're not being sparky enough about what else we do. Anyway, 1 minute, Liz, what's yours?
I think mine is to keep going with the Wildlife Trust and getting people on the farm. So for example, the worm thing I've talked about on the 17th of May, link in the chat. Also, I'm doing a foraging event with a local herbalist on the 29th of April. So we're doing a farm walk, and she's coming along and seeing what plants are here, how to use them, getting people that would come to a foraging event onto a farm. So there's loads of opportunities to talk about different things. We've got a wild service tree, apparently that's very exciting. So yes, I think for me, I'm trying to get the Wildlife Trust to visit, and I'll keep trying, and I'll try some more, both in terms of the home farm, and also this SSI we've got as well, which is important limestone heath type land. The other thing just to say is carbon calling is still in planning phase, isn't it? So it's we're getting there in terms of speakers and program and stuff. So the ambition is for the website and tickets to go live middle of May. The next ReGen Ag Chat will be on the pros and cons of biochar in the UK system, and that's on the 15th of May. So that's back on a Monday. So we'll send detail about that.
But thank you both very much. Lots of positive comments in the chat, and yeah, no, it's been really good. I think our aim was to get into the nitty gritty. I think we've done that. Yeah, so thank you.
Brilliant, thank you. Anybody who wants to look at it again, hopefully we'll be on YouTube tomorrow if I pull my finger out. Thanks everybody. Bye for now.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks
Thank you. Take care.
Bye bye.